2 years ago, Citizens Advice Leicestershire was in trouble. The staff survey was rated red, the quality of advice was falling, the financial deficit threatened the organisation itself. Today, these are all green across the board, sickness has nearly halved, and we've just been shortlisted for a national CIPD People Management Award for the second time in a row. So, what changed? Not a restructure, not a rescue package, a leadership training programme designed and delivered entirely in-house. I'm Melissa March, I'm the head of income here. So I'm the one who worries about every pound we spend and knows just how hard we work to bring funding into the organisation. I'm delighted to be joined today by the three people at the heart of this turnaround. Vicky Gutteridge, our Chief Executive, Rehaan Adam, our Head of Operations, and Deepa Kalyanji, our Projects Manager. Welcome. So, Vicky, take us back to 2023. What was actually going on?
So honestly, pretty much everything at once. So I joined the organisation in 2024, and at that point in time, we'd recently lost our previous chief executive unexpectedly. We were still carrying the weight of the pandemic, and we were in the midst of a cost of living crisis. And that meant demand for our advice was exploding, just as our resilience was at its lowest. Nearly a quarter of our posts were vacant at one point, and when the national survey came back red, meaning requires improvement, that was the moment we had to start managing around the problems and actually diagnose them.
And the diagnosis was managers?
So the diagnosis came from staff and not from me, and that was really important. So when I first arrived, I ran a CEO listen and learn exercise, and that was across all of our staff and volunteers. And we asked one question: what's getting in the way? And the answer was remarkably consistent. Better management, more development for our staff and volunteers, clearer direction from the leadership team and the organisational strategy. And I want to be careful here, because it wasn't a criticism of our managers, it was a criticism of how we'd managed our managers. So we'd promoted brilliant advisors into really complex management roles, but really not given them anything to succeed with, that people skills piece. And that's really important. And that's not a people problem, that's an investment problem.
So why build your own programme rather than buy one in? I mean, that's unusual for a charity of this size.
Yeah, for me, I just felt it was really important that the diagnosis of our organisation had to come before the design. We had to really understand what was causing the issues, what were the root cause problems, because until we really understood that, we couldn't understand what was going to be the best intervention from us. And an off-the-shelf problem is built from somebody else's assumptions, and our programme was built from our own workforce data, our own gaps, our own culture. I'd also recently finished a master's in HR, looking exactly at this problem, the hidden costs of workplace conflict and the lack of support and training for line managers and how that all interrelated. So it's actually much cheaper to invest early for early interventions than it is in late repair. So we had our evidence base, we took the nerve in spending the money, a serious investment in our time, and made in the middle of a financial crisis. So our board actually backed that decision before a single session had run.
And around here, Vicky, you are kind of known for measuring everything. So hand on heart, how do you know this worked?
Yeah, so it was really, really important to measure whether this was having an impact in the organisation, because it's all very well putting in intervention into place, but how do we understand if that has taken effect? So the measurements that we took all point to the same direction. Otherwise, you can't trust them. So what we measured was what people learned, and that was before and after every session. The gains were statistically significant right across the program, and that was self-rating. You know, how did you feel before the program? How did you feel after? We also asked whether people would recommend the program, and satisfaction stayed high in every single session. But the one that was really important to me, and the one that I couldn't do in my dissertation, was that longitudinal feedback, and feedback from people who were being managed by the managers in the leadership program. So we had independent 360-degree feedback, and 92% of peers said they observed real change in how managers actually led their teams after the leadership program. So self-report can flatter you, but 360-degree feedback is the critical sort of measure that I took on board.
And beyond the training program, though,
Yeah, so that's where it gets real. Has it had any impact on the organisation overall? So what we saw is our sickness absence nearly halved. Resignations were at a 4-year low. So that spoke to the well-being of our staff, which is really important, but also our performance. So we are a quality assured organisation, and we have quality audits every month. And we were again in that needing improvement status, but that moved from red to green, and that was confirmed by an independent AQS external audits. So we also saw any formal disputes and appeals falling away almost entirely. So that told me that staff were really understanding what the expectations were in performance, what the objectives were, and that they didn't feel sort of misunderstood about what it was that we were asking them to do.
and when I put my head of income hat on here, then you spent a serious amount of money during a financial crisis on training. How did you convince your board to back you?
So it couldn't be just on trust alone, and that was quite right. So I took a business case to them that was built on evidence, and that was before any session ran. I obviously had my own research and quantified what unresolved conflict and poor management were already costing us. So we were able to take statistics from our absence management over the previous years, our resignation data over previous years, so we could actually try and quantify that against industry benchmarks. So we weren't choosing between spending and saving. We were already spending, but it was hidden, and that's the issue with conflict. It doesn't show up in your departments, but what it does do is it shows up on your bottom line. So the evaluation that we took back to the board after the first programme confirmed that we were, sort of getting those really good results. In the year after we invested, our conflict costs fell by more than £250,000. For every pound we put in, we got nearly £6 back. But the number that matters most isn't ours. It's the 14,500 people who came to us in crisis last year and got advice that was right first time. So we saw better managers meant better advisors, and that really was the whole point of the programme.
Thank you. So then, Rehaan, you lead across operations, across multiple services, complex services. What's actually changed on the ground?
Okay, so for me, it started with a fairly uncomfortable mirror. I stepped up into a senior role right in the middle of the quality problems we were having, and my instinct under pressure was to move fast and try and fix things as soon as I could. The program and the 360 feedback especially showed me that in a team that was already anxious, my urgency to fix things made things worse, not better, because of the pace that I was trying to do it at. So that was hard to hear, and it was the most useful thing that anybody's told me in a long, long time.
Thank you for that. And so what did you do differently then?
Okay, so I changed the question. I stopped asking, why is this advisor struggling? And I started asking, what is the system producing this result? And once you ask that, you see things everywhere that needed changing. So our guidance was scattered, different services doing the same work, but in different ways. Supervision depended entirely on which manager you happen to have at that particular time. Quality feedback wasn't honest enough for people to know what good advice actually looked like. None of that is a people problem, so we rebuilt the system, one set of guidance, consistent supervision across the services, improved plans designed to build capability rather than punish, and honest and transparent quality feedback uh, is what we implemented at the time.
And it stuck.
It stuck absolutely. So quality went from our lowest point to consistently above target within a year, and the external audit confirmed it independently, green across every domain. But what I'm most proud of isn't the score, it's the system now produces good advice by design, whoever's in the room. So I didn't fix people, I fixed the system, and the program gave me frameworks and the honesty and the self-awareness to see the difference.
Thank you very much. Quite a transformation. So, Deepa, then, you're managing a team on the front line, and this all sounds really strategic, but what does it look like for you on that rainy Tuesday?
On a rainy Tuesday, it looks like having a conversation that you'd probably rather avoid, and that's the honest answer. And I think, like many managers in our sector, I was promoted because I was good at the advice work, and then found myself dealing with some really genuinely complex people situations without any kind of a toolkit or a compass to guide me through it. And I think before the program, my instinct would have been to kind of hope that it settled when something felt difficult. And I would have told you that that was kindness at the time.
But it isn't?
Well, I would say it was avoidance dressed up as kindness. And the program had a name for it. It was ruinous empathy. So that's where you care about someone in your team so much that you never tell them what they actually need to hear. And what I learned is that clarity is actually the kind thing. And some of my team were really new and they were in new services. So it was bound to be some tension at times. But the old me would have waited and hoped. Instead, I named it early, had the difficult conversations properly, stayed consistent, held firm, and stayed compassionate throughout it all, because those elements aren't opposites, and that is the whole skill.
Absolutely. And then the outcome, Deepa.
The outcome, my teams are thriving, and that is absolutely amazing to see. We resolved situations that could have ended badly for everyone involved and turned it around because I had the tools to lead through it instead of around it. And I think the leadership moments that I'm proudest of are seeing my team perform highly, meet their targets, and feel supported along the way.
And you mentioned that the program gave you more than tools.
Yeah, I'd say it was the people. We all went through it together. All of the managers were in the same room, and that has never happened before. So now when I'm stuck and there's a colleague who'll ask me the question that I need rather than the answer I want, and that is really useful to have as a manager. And I think in that situation that I mentioned, it was one of the other managers from the first cohort who stopped me in my tracks with one question. And that was, is staying quiet to keep the peace actually kind? And I would say that that's not a training course, that's the infrastructure. And it's there at 10 to 5 on a Friday when the wheels come off.
It's always 10 to 5 on a Friday. Always. So then, what happens next? This isn't stopping, I hope. Vicky?
No, so the whole thing was designed to outlast the person who built it. So we're opening the next cohort in September this year, in a couple of months, in fact. So the program's now a pipeline, not just a course. So people who came through the first cohorts have now been promoted. Some of them are now helping shape what comes next. And we're extending the model further, including sharing what we've learned beyond our walls. Into the Citizens Advice Network and beyond, other VCSE organisations, because we really think that what we have learned could be valuable for other people as well. And, learn from our mistakes. It takes less time.
Absolutely. My last question then, Rehaan, what would you say to a manager here or anywhere wondering whether something like this is worth their time?
I definitely do it. Even though the mirror is uncomfortable, it will only last for about a week. And it's whatever you're going to learn is useful for the rest of your career.
Thank you. Deepa, what about you?
I would say that you have most likely been carrying it alone for years, but you don't have to, and that's the bit that nobody tells you.
Vicky, anything else to add?
Yeah, I just think it's really important to understand that leadership isn't a personality trait. You know, we're often told that, but actually it's a capability, and capabilities can be built. And we've got the data to prove that. So if you're reading a red dashboard right now, or if you're sensing friction and tension in your workplace, particularly with the new Employment Rights Act coming through, you know, giving support to your managers is really important. So that does not need to be your ending, and it certainly wasn't ours.
Vicky, Rehaan, Deepa, thank you all very much. And if your organisation is looking at its own red dashboard, Citizens Advice Leicestershire now shares training and this methodology with other organisations. You'll find the details on our website. Thanks very much for listening.